It was the summer of 1990. I was 15 years old. The location Devil's Hill, Independence, Missouri. I lived at the apartments whose business name at the time was Glendale Common Complex, right alongside of Highway 291. I was told that Devil's Hill was where satanic cults did rituals like animal and human sacrifices had taken place until police intervened and made several arrests. So I asked to be taken to the location of Devil's Hill, which was just about a couple hundred yards away from the apartment complex I lived at. I made a few friends there. I don't remember the young boy's name, but let's call him Matt, that took me to Devil's Hill. There were trails in the woods that led us to it. Once we arrived there, I saw huge rocks, one being horizontal. I am assuming was the area for the sacrifices made to Satan. It was surrounded by overhanging boulders as big as a car. I was stunned by its perfection of a location that was set just like in a Pulp Fiction horror film. Okay, so that part of this story was my initial visit. So that's part one of two. Part two is me being pulled at my very soul on the night of a lunar eclipse to go to a specific area just by a huge tree that was on the inside of the forest tree line about 35 to 45 yards from the sacrificial ground site. The voices were strong that day and convinced me to be at that tree for observation of the lunar eclipse in its full lapse of duration until the moon was full once again. Now let me fill in some more detail about picking the location. Matt, about 3 hours earlier that day, walked with me in agreement. He'd help pick a spot to observe the moon that night with me. What happened when we finally got to the huge tree, which, keep in mind, it was a few hours earlier, which means daylight was still upon us, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He says to me, "Look, I see someone in the woods." I said, "Point and show me." He pointed and I saw nothing but the trees. I asked Matt, "What did they look like?" He said, "Long blonde hair and was wearing all black like a trench coat." It was a man. So I said, "Let's walk that way and see if we can spot him." And so we walked same direction he pointed, and we found no one. After that, Matt was immediately ready to get the heck out of there and go home, so we both went to our homes. As for me, I went back right before nightfall to the huge tree to observe the lunar eclipse and please the voices telling me to do so. What happens next during the eclipse is beyond anything I've ever experienced. Once the moon turned completely blacked out, I felt like something or someone was watching me. I turned around and saw something white and about as big as a basketball coming towards me on the ground right towards my feet. I quickly grabbed a fallen tree branch and used it as a weapon and swung downward on top of the white object, crushing it. Then when I stood up, the wind picked and the object appeared to be a possum, and it moved fast behind the tree. I then lifted the branch over my head and jumped into the air towards the direction behind the tree that the possum went, and I blindly swung down a second time in attempt to handicap the possum. Well, the branch broke and I was bent over, and when I looked up, what I saw was a billy goat with a chain around its neck and a pentagram ornament. The goat shook his head in disappointment that I did something wrong, and in front of me it dissolved and disappeared into nothing. The moon was blacked out the entire time of the chain of events described in the story. I stayed like instructed until the moon was full again, then went to Matt's apartment and told them what happened. They said they believed me. I was so impressed and ecstatic that they listened to me. I only told about the experience. Back when I was younger, I never told people about the voices because I was afraid of what would happen to me, especially after my 3D encounter with a psychiatrist. Thank you for listening.